It is a freaking fantastic movie. It is my honor tonight to moderate a Q&A with the behind-the-scenes creative people who made this film come to life. And there are a bunch of them, so I'm just going to get going right away. Please first welcome re-recording mixer David Giammarco. Casting director Ronna Kress. Costume designer Daniel Orlandi. Composer Buck Sanders. Production designer Francois Audouy. Editor Andrew Buckland, and also editor Michael McCusker. And please welcome the director and producer of Ford v Ferrari, James Mangold. So, first question has to go to you, James. The script comes your way. What made you want to jump on board and be part of it?
Well, feedback central. Go ahead. The script came my way?
The script came your way. What made you want to jump on board and make your next film?
Well, the script we shot isn't the one I read. I first read, there are many iterations of this story that were done around 2010 was when I first, 2011 was when I first saw it. And what I loved was the character story. I'm not a big motorsports guy. I'm not a big car guy. I mean, I love driving and I love beautiful cars, but my attraction to it was just, I didn't know this story. And I thought it was really original and surprising. You know, I felt like there was a lot I was learning about motorsports, but also just life, watching these characters interact. And I also kind of identified with them, I guess, because the effort to make a car isn't all that different than to make a movie in some ways, and the kind of battles they fought seemed familiar to me.
And you'd worked with Christian before, but you hadn't worked with Matt. How did they sort of get involved, and what about them made you think that they were the perfect people to play Carol and Ken?
Well, they just both seemed right. I mean, Christian especially leapt out to me, having known him a long time, and Matt, because in a way, when I was trying to think of Shelby and who would play him, I kept thinking of the Coen brothers remake of True Grit that he was in, where I thought he was so amazing as this kind of Texas marshal. And but I've known both guys since the 90s, and on Christian's side, if you've known him, he's one of the most joyful, lovely, creative, inspiring human people. And I mean, the sense of just really not interested in being a movie star, not interested, it just really connects with crew and really loves to play. And so many of his performances, brilliant as they are, reflect a very different person, a kind of darker soul. And when I read this, I felt like it was kind of really like him and Ken Miles. And I couldn't wait for him to read it when we got a good draft, and he responded immediately. And in Matt's case as well, we went to both of them at the same time, because it seems like making ensemble movies, it's very much about getting what people call chemistry, but I also think sometimes I can't know there's going to be chemistry. They've never made a movie before. But I have my own personal theory is getting people who are very different kind of acting types or processes, different actors with very different methods or very different rhythms, I find are really exciting together. Like on another movie that a lot of the folks up here made with me, Walk the Line, Reese and Joaquin, Reese is not that unlike a lot of the characters she plays. This is the way it's going to be. I'm going to land here. She never misses a mark. She never drops a line. She's like pro in every way and super talented, but lands the plane every time, in the center of the runway. Joaquin, well, you get it, I'm sure. Is more like Pigpen from Peanuts, and so there's just this kind of swirling sense of chaos or danger around him, and so you put Reese with her kind of, wipe the china perfection in a scene with a character like that, it's not only that she's going to make him bring the scene in for a landing, but that he's throwing her off balance in a way that's really exciting, you know. And similarly, Matt's kind of, I think of him as this kind of Zen master. He's super subtle, and he's kind of got sometimes on set, I'd shoot things and go like, did he do anything? And then I get in dailies or in the cutting room with these guys, and I'd see it, and I go, holy shit. And it's just, he plays with a really fine palette, and Christian is obviously more explosive or dynamic in his instincts, and that's a really nice thing to have that kind of friction with two people.
Well, Ronna, the question is then for you, like, how did, knowing that James likes to work with actors and who come from these different backgrounds, what did that mean for you in terms of casting the film?
Well, everybody wants to work with Jim, so it makes the job, I have to say, really easy in that regard. And every single person auditioned for us. We just would have long conversations about what Jim was looking for, and then focus in on someone. Bernthal came to read, Josh Lucas read, Ray McKinnon, Noah, Katrina, everyone participated in the process, and I think they want to work with a director who's such a good actor's director, so it makes my job easy.
Well, I know that Tracy Letts, you know, he's a Tony Award winner. He has such great sort of like resume that, you know, and the work he's done in the past. But I would not have thought that this would be a role that he wouldn't have been necessarily on my list. How did he get on your list to play this? Because he's absolutely fantastic.
Thank you. We had lots of conversations about what Henry Ford was going to be, and ultimately I think what works so well is his anonymity in a way, where we weren't just putting a movie star in that part, we were putting an amazing actor, and he's fantastic in the film.
Another amazing part of the film that I continue to find out new things about that sort of blow my mind is the production design. And Francois, I have to ask you, can you just talk about how much you had to recreate for the final race, the 1966 Le Mans race? Because I don't think the audience has a clue what you guys had to do. It is, because the big thing is it doesn't exist as it did then.
No, and I didn't know how much I'd have to build. I'd have to rebuild until we were a couple weeks in, a couple months in even, because in the end of the film, every turn, every chicane has got a name that's quite famous in the lore of this race. So the Dunlop Bridge and the Mulsanne Corner, the Mulsanne Strait, and Indianapolis, they've all got names, and they're very famous for very specific reasons. And so we had to cast those locations very, very specifically so that they would be recognizable in the movie, and they would all cut together. And there were 4 different locations across 2 states. There were like 6 miles of set, basically. We were going by at about 150 feet per second when you're traveling 100 miles an hour. And a lot of that is in camera. So tons and tons of banners, tons of signage. The main set was at a shutdown airport, an airport we shut down for 4 months in outside LA, in Agua Dulce. And then we were in Atlanta, at Road Atlanta, and in Savannah at the Grand Prize Raceway, and then just outside of Savannah, about 45 minutes outside of town. So it was a lot.
Okay, so just
Can I chime in one thing?
Yeah, please.
One thing that relates to this thing Francois is talking about that I think relates to the editing team and the sound teams is that, you know, Francois described, you have like 4 locations in Georgia and then 1 here in Agua Dulce, which is the grandstand. So every time you see a car make 1 lap, it's traveled essentially 4,000 miles in the sense that it's on both sides of the country. But you have to remember that it's from the editing team to the sound team to the on-set continuity and dressers and painters, and you're talking about a single lap with cars in a certain position, with light in a certain position, either rain, either a wet down or full rain, low sun, high sun, dawn. What is the position of the cars? We had 5 different dirt levels for the cars, if I remember right. And when it rains, then dirt level 5 goes down to dirt level 2. All of that has to be figured out to make one continuous lap that's made up of 5 or 6 different locations that then seamlessly gets cut into something that feels like one trip around a loop. Is for all of us, I think, was still kind of the magic of movies in that we kind of had no idea it would actually work. We just worked our butts off, and the editing crew, these editors deserve incredible.
Well, that was my questions for you, Michael Andrew, is how daunting was it to sort of put that all together? How long did it take you as compared to editing sort of the rest of the film?
Long time. Actually, it was, we had done a huge amount of previews before we went out, spent a lot of time actually working out the sequence before it was even shot. So I kind of cut it twice. It was the only way that we were actually going to be able to pull it off and do what Francois and Jim talked about, which is to shoot in 5 different locations, is to have a good idea, have a game plan. So I was on the movie, almost 3 months before we started shooting, and cut that all together and work that out. And then when the footage came in, it was really, you deal with the intention, and then you get what you get. And we got most of what was intended, but then you have to do some invention. So it was, it was filling and patching stuff in, and making it seamless. That was the daunting part of it.
Well,
and speed, like really making sure that we sold the speed, and the danger was really, really important.
I guess that's a sort of overall question is, how fast are the cars actually going? Is it sort of in camera? Are they going as fast as general race cars would be going? Or
Sometimes it's impossible to do what we were doing at the speed. Sometimes it's also weird that stuff in one shot looks fast when you're going one speed and then looks radically slower in another angle. So it's really, in the end, you're kind of gauging speed by eye, because it's film, as we all know here, is a very plastic art, and it's how it feels more than the number. But we had cars going very, very fast in the movie, and we had sometimes cars not going fast enough, or sometimes intentionally there was no safe way to do something we were doing at that speed, so we'd accelerate, and post something that we just couldn't possibly do safely at the speed we were doing it.
Well, Daniel, I wanted to ask you in terms of the costumes. What did you and Jim talk about in terms of the look? You're not only recreating just general looks from the 1960s, but you're recreating all these uniforms that the drivers wear. What was the most important thing in terms of starting that process?
Well, everything is important to Jim and to us. Recreating all of the team jackets and the racing uniforms. We found an original racing uniform that we copied because we had to make them for the real racers that were racing, so they had to be fireproof, but the ones that they wore were not. So we had those, and then one of the pit crew, Charlie Agapoo, had an original shirt which he let us measure, and we recreated that. But then it's working with the actors, Matt, to make him feel like Carroll Shelby. So we worked sort of organically and tried different things on and showed it to Jim. What do you think? Should we go a little further? It was a big thing about how we didn't want, none of them are doing impersonations. They're sort of inhabiting the character. And what makes them feel like the character, even just Christian's little things, the suit that he wears to go to Le Mans, an old 50s suit, because that character would say, I have a suit, I don't need a new suit. So that's to make them feel like the character, and that's, our joy.
And I read that you worked with Francois in terms of setting a color palette for each of the races. Can you guys both talk about that?
Yeah, we did boards in the beginning. A lot of it came from research. Actually, I was trying to find a way in visually, and I was really inspired by the cars, which were so beautiful. The actual cars, when we put them on the wall, the palette sort of presented itself. The Ferrari reds and the blues and the yellows and the greens, and so we knew we didn't want to change the colors of the cars, and then we built a sort of color scheme around that. And the colors help the audience realize where they are in the geography of the movie without having to resort to captions or subtitles. I think that helps.
Absolutely. David, speaking of the cars, I was told that your job as re-recording mixer was coming up with a lot of the sounds for the car's engines. Is that correct? Yeah.
We were fortunate enough to find the cars to record. That was kind of critical. And they were, the GT40 and the Ferrari were characters. And we found someone in Ohio who had a period correct GT40. And then we found, and we recorded that he allowed us to get it on a racetrack and really go with it. And we had stationary mics set up all over and mics all over the car. And we found a Ferrari in Florida and recorded that. So that was, those two cars were key for us. And then, then it's building upon that. But that was integral.
And I know you worked with Paul and Dan, I believe, in terms of the overall sound of the film. Can you talk about, creating sort of just the atmosphere in terms of overall of the sound design, and James, if you want to talk about this as well, how important that was in terms of getting it right, making it sound as authentic as possible?
Well, authentic is important also, but I think one thing we all have learned over the years, a lot of us have worked on a lot of movies together, and there was we knew this was a kind of sonic opportunity. But one of the things that's really become clear, I think, to all of us as we go on in our careers is that in sound, so much of what makes a movie feel designed or orchestrated is a sense of what you're not hearing or a sense of what you're getting focused on. And that you're not just getting, a lot of movies today are kind of sensory overload and you're kind of getting hit with everything. And that one of the things we really tried to do, as Dave was saying, having a beautiful idol, just an idol that in and of itself is just a beautiful, sumptuous effect, means that there's so little else to do. When someone just starts their car and you just hear that thing, that's just in and of itself, you get to luxuriate in sound. And that sometimes what we associate a highly designed sound picture with a lot of sounds. But I think it's like all things, like composition, visual composition, and all others, it's about focus, and I think it's what Dave and Paul and Don, not Dan, we're really focused on, is trying to kind of, because it's easy to gather all this stuff up, almost like picking seashells. You can't stop, and then there's the brake, and there's the gear lever, and there's the rattle, and there's the chassis hum, and there's the wind, and there's the whistle, and there's the rattle of the window, and at some point you kind of go, well, all that would be there, but what is going to focus our attention in the right place? But it's a great team. I mean, please take it from where I am there, Dave, and add anything you.
Yeah, and one of the big things was to, work with music and really let the sound effects play when they needed to play and give over to music when music had to take the scenes, especially on a long, the sequence of Le Mans was, such a big piece. So, and a lot of the work we did, it developed over, we had a long temp up, we were giving sound effects to the picture department, and Mike and Andrew were weaving our sound effects in with what was being done in the cutting room, and we just kept going from there. And Jim lets us go at it, and then he sits in with us, and then he's very creative on the stage, and we bend and pull and push and develop.
Well, Buck, let's talk about the score. It's incredible. It's beautiful. Did you have different themes for different moments? Like, how did you and Marco sort of break down what you wanted to do on the screen?
We had there's a theme for the father and son relationship with Miles and his son, and then the friendship between Shelby and Miles. And they're sort of interconnected thematically. And then for the racing, there's a victory theme, and then a lot of sort of rhythmic sort of elements that are recurring. That because when you're in the middle of the race, that's going to cut through better than a flute solo.
I wanted to ask you both you, Jim, and Donna. Noah Jupe, who plays Christian's son, he has to connect with him, and he's a great actor. I don't know if you've seen him in any other things for people in the audience. He was in Wonder, and he was in A Quiet Place. How did you know? Was it through auditions? Was it just meeting him in person that he was going to be able to click and sort of bring that emotion to those scenes with Christian?
Well, Ronna, you were the one who kind of brought him to me, so you should talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that we were going to look for a boy who had to be British, and he was doing such good work at the time. And I remember that audition because he came in and he actually probably knew more than we did about the character. And he was very comfortable in telling Jim lots of stories about Peter. And he's so organic and natural in his performance. Then we found out at one point that we didn't think that Peter actually needed to have a British accent. Remember that? And we said, oh, it didn't matter because he was such a perfect piece of casting, we just decided to go with him.
Yeah, I always felt, I don't know, I think that was the studio wondering if we needed a British accent, but I thought it should be, because if both parents were going to be Brits, I didn't think it would be good to have a kid sound like he was from the Valley, but I did, I mean, he was amazing in the reading, and I really believe, one of the things I believe that we lose when actors don't read, is actually really what is for me a really unique stepping stone, not only in the decision process of finding the right person for a role, but also I do it as much as I can, almost always. I read opposite the actor, and I learn so much. The reason I do that is I try to make it clear to the actor that I'm making a fool of myself too, as it were. I mean, that I'm kind of here with you. Auditions are the most horrendous things if you think about them. Many of you have either been on them on one end of the side or another, and they're in the sense that there's this, I don't like there to be this kind of couch of people observing. Nothing's worse than in commercials where it's really horrendous and they're all on laptops and not even looking up. But that's a whole other thing. But the idea that someone comes in, and that, to me, I'd make every audition for at least 40 minutes, and so I try and reduce the number of people I read, and I try and spend a certain amount of time getting to know the person, and then I usually have Ronna tell the agent, please don't have them off book, and don't give them nothing screws up actors in my mind more than the clues their agents give them about what we're looking for. So if someone comes in dressed like a flight attendant, you're like, what the fuck? And my agent said, and you're like, whoa. And I've been practicing this accent in the mirror for the last, say, 3 days, and it's like, my thing is, let's find it together in these 40 minutes, and let's see, because what I learn more is not whether they're going to nail it in that moment, but just what is it like? What is the give and take like? And the biggest thing I'm always looking for is, can they think between their lines? Can they think, can we see thought? I don't mean it in the pejorative way. I mean, can they act thought? Or are they just here to do the lines? And that's almost exclusively what I'm looking for when I sit down with people is the moments between. And Noah, especially with children, Noah or Daphne Keane in my last film, in Logan, or it's always just looking, can they own the scene in the times when their jaw isn't moving? Can they live in the scene? And a much less experienced actor may actually have much more life in them or presence in them, and that's a big deal, and it's a pleasure to work with someone like Ronna because the environment is so, she helps me create a situation that is really, as much as on the line, that is really relaxed and is fun even, and because it's my hope, even for the actors that might not get a role, that they leave feeling like they had a kind of workout, a kind of something exciting. I've had many actors who I've read on a previous movie and haven't gotten a role who come eagerly back in on another movie because it was a positive experience. And that to me is so critical because in the end, risking something of yourself is how you get work and is how you make good choices. And so I'm so appreciative when actors do that.
questions from the audience. There's one big topic we haven't talked about, which are the cars themselves, which is sort of, I mean, it's 2000, you guys made this in 2018. I don't know how many of these, cars still exist or how you even brought them together. Jim and Francois, I don't know if you can talk about the work that Rick did. Rick Collins was the picture car coordinator, because it's sort of, I think it's remarkable.
Yeah, the cars were an extraordinary amount of work. We ended up building, I think it was 34 cars from scratch in this movie, and then a bunch of them had to be repainted and redressed for the different races to look like different cars. And not only that, they had, a lot of times picture cars are built, just as rollers. These had to be built as performance vehicles with massive engines and braking and maneuverability, and they had to work closely with the stunt department to make sure that they were able to perform properly. So the cars were built, the race cars were built at 5 or 6 different companies all around the country. There was a company up in Michigan, there was a company down in Irvine, there was a bunch of companies in Los Angeles, and Rick had to coordinate with all of those different manufacturers. On top of that, there were dozens of cars that had to be rented that were for just dressing or slow driving, things like that. In the Ford factory scene at the beginning of the movie, that scene, those are 21 Ford Falcons that we purchased for the movie and then had to restore to cherry condition. So I don't know if you can buy a Ford Falcon right now. I mean, we kind of bought them all that we found on eBay. And then so yeah, they had to be restored, one, primered in one row, and then kind of like the windshields off in the next one, and then all completely finished in the next row. So the cars were a lot of fun to do, and then there were even some collectible cars. The actual cars in the movie, we're talking about $20, $30 million cars, each of these race cars.
If we were using the ones that were
using
real.
the real cars, so that would be, our budget would be gone after like one scene. But in the Ferrari factory, there's a number of actually really beautiful original cars. There was a car that was like $25 million that was there on that day, and with a velvet rope around it while we were shooting.
The guy drove it there, though, didn't he? He drove it there.
There was one car that was the one next to it that was like a $50 million Ferrari that he drove there, and the GTO, I think. But and then they were dressed in with picture cars that we had built from scratch. We built the P3, 230 P3s. We built 3 of those. We built the in the back you can see the F1 Ferraris that are very rare. We built from scratch, and yeah. So it was a lot, and a lot of love going into the details and adding all the little rivets and the graphics and the stickers, and even inside there's like millions and millions of notes, of gauges, and seatbelts, and it just goes on and on.
Wow. On that note, I'm crazy impressed. We want to take some quick questions from the audience. You, sir, right there.
Not a question, just an expression of gratitude for the mix. It was such a pungent and powerful mix that was never too loud. And my ears are fine right now.
Awesome.
You, sir, right here.
Yeah, you mentioned that you're not a car guy, but I really am that guy. And I can't express my gratitude to all of you, to everyone on the stage, because it's so apparent to me, knowing the story and the legacy behind this. It's so important that you guys put so much love into, you said the authenticity wasn't the most important thing. But for me, it really is, and it really shows through down to, the sound of the 427s and Ferraris and everything else. It was really.
I don't mean that it's not important to all of us. I just meant that when you're crafting it, it's only one, meaning it's the one factoid when for the mixers and for the design, everyone goes like, did you use the right sounds? And yes. I just mean there's so much more that they did. In manipulating and working all that stuff. But of course that's really important to us, and it was really important to me to kind of discover what made this world fascinating, and I did. I mean, I did lean into it as I was making it, and kind of, in a way, not being already a fan probably helped me, because one of the things that had held this project up from happening was trying to get the cost down. and to get the cost down, you had to kind of get rid of some story elements or kind of streamline the story, and I have a feeling it was very hard. It would be very hard if I were an extreme car dude to go like, well, you have to show that. We have to show that. And there's that. It's like when I was making. I am a big Johnny Cash fan, so when I made that movie, it was like very hard whenever I'd remove one song from the movie. Only it's somehow, again, just like I was talking about earlier with the sound, a lot of, for me, movie making is finding focus and simplifying, and so that was a big part. But that's awesome to hear. Thank
No,
you.
it's really well done and very nice.
Thank you.
Really,
Thank you.
One last question. You right there, sir?
Yes, I'm curious, after having worked on this for what it sounds like 2010 on, are all...
No. I was interested in it, but I couldn't get on it till a few years ago. So we started reworking the script about 3 years ago. But I was only desiring this project from afar back in 2010.
3 years. After doing this, are you done with automotive racing movies?
I'm done with automotive. If you've looked at my career, I pretty much finished with a genre at the moment I finished one movie. But I definitely it's not. It wasn't that it was bad. It was a joyous experience. But I personally love and most of this team that works with me, we enjoy taking what we learned from one thing and bringing it to something else. And I think it's incredible how much you learn in one genre that really helps you, frees you when you move to another, and how grateful I am that I'm in a position where I get to move around a bit.
I believe there's actually one last question, and it is you right there.
Did Mr. Bale and Mr. Damon race each other, and if they did, who won? Because hot laps, they had to do hot laps, right? You're in Willow Springs with all those cars.
That's such a tough question to answer because the answer is no. But I'll try and turn it in. They love each other, but both guys are not lost in that kind of I got to do everything myself mode. They both embrace the illusions of movies and love their families and want to return to them, and yes, and appreciate their stuntmen and their doubles and their we tried to move them through space in every way as realistically as we could, and did, meaning we built rigs that would allow them to move through space at high speed and slalom through cars, but they weren't driving, meaning that we had a biscuit rig and some other different rigs that allowed them to us to shoot with the camera in the car, shooting them with all the interactive light and wind and all the stuff that's really hard to do in a more sterile situation, and that stuff. But they didn't really. I mean, that didn't happen. So, it wasn't. Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking David, Ronna, Daniel, Buck, Francois, Andrew, Michael, and James. And please spread the word about Ford v Ferrari. Thank you.